On July the 14th, 1966, Corazon Amaral crawled out from under a bed where she'd been hiding all night, opened the window, and screamed into the street that 8 of her friends were dead. All of them dead. A tall man had come in, stabbed, assaulted, and killed them all. Corazon was the only survivor of one of Chicago's most heinous mass murders. To this day, there are few cases as brutal, as hideous as the crimes of Richard Speck, a man who gave authorities multiple opportunities to lock him up decades before he killed 8 nursing students in one single night. Here's the story of Richard Speck, the mass murderer and serial rapist that everyone forgot about. Let's get into it.
The murders shocked and horrified the entire city, resulting in one of the largest manhunts in the city of Chicago.
Is the first reporter at the crime scene, a nondescript townhouse at 2319 East 100th Street. Something is terribly wrong.
After Corazon raised the alarm, police arrived at the boarding house on 2319 East 100th Street in Chicago's Jeffrey Manor neighborhood. They couldn't possibly have prepared themselves for what they were walking into. The building was used to house nursing students, of which Corazon was a part of, and now it was an absolute bloodbath in there. The walls, the floor, the carpets, everything covered in blood, and more bodies than any of the officers had seen at one time in their lives. Inside were the bodies of 8 women: Gloria Davy, Patricia Matusik, Nina Jo Schmale, Pamela Wilkening, Suzanne Farris, Mary Ann Jordan, Merlita Gargiulo, and Valentina Passion. Valentina, Merlita, and Corazon were from the Philippines, brought to the U.S. on a highly sought-after nursing exchange program. All the women were between the ages of 20 and 24. According to Corazon, a tall, thin man had entered the building, armed with a knife and a pistol, at around 11 p.m. the previous night by going through a window on the ground floor they left open to let some air through the house. He was polite, calm, and spoke with a pleasant southern drawl. Nothing about his demeanor could prepare the girls for the violence he was about to subject them to.
It seems like the way he talked to us, it seems like he's not gonna do anything. It seems like he's not gonna hurt us. I think he was raping them, or, But I was not thinking that he was killing them.
He corralled 6 of the nurses, Corazon among them, into one room and used strips of bed sheets and torn clothing to tie their hands. They did not put up a fight because Speck told them that he'd let them go once he got the money and valuables he came for. They gave him $23, everything they had in their purses. Speck sat down to light a cigarette and even chatted to them. At midnight, the last 3 nurses returned home from their shift. Mary Ann Jordan, Suzanne Farris, and Gloria Davy were quickly tied up, placed with the others, and their handbags turned over for cash. Then, he chose one woman, lead her out of the room, stab or strangle her to death, wash his hands, and return to the bedroom where the rest were held. Speck would then smoke a cigarette, stare at the terrified women silently, choose another victim, and repeat the sequence of events all over again. They realized quickly enough that the women he'd let out weren't returning, but by then it was too late. They were securely tied up and unable to move. The last victim, Gloria Davy, was sexually assaulted before being stabbed more viciously than the other women. We'd later find out that she resembled Speck's ex-wife, and that was why he subjected her to such a terrible ordeal before killing her. In the middle of all the chaos, Corazon crawled under a bed where she lay for hours and hours as each one of her colleagues were let out and killed. The killer left sometime after 4 in the morning, but Corazon remained in her hiding place until the sun came out. Most likely, Speck simply lost count of all the women he'd tied up, or the frenzied headspace he must have been in made him forget that there were 9 women instead of the 8 he'd killed. Who knows what was going through his mind? Whatever it was, it allowed Corazon to scoot under a bed unnoticed and ultimately be the reason she survived. Police found signs that some of the women were tortured, like the killer wanted to prolong their suffering. He never once used the pistol, only the knife and his hands, preferring to make the massacre as intimate and personal as possible. Luckily, he left behind many perfect fingerprints and shoe prints stamped in blood on the floor. And Corazon remembered that he had a very unique tattoo on his left arm. It read, "Born to Raise Hell." Police only had to go across the street to the Marine Hall where seamen went to look for work to find out who the murderer was. Richard Speck had been there the day before. They even had a photo of him in their files. The fingerprints at the scene were then matched to his police record, or should I say records, because there was a lot of incidents that the cops had picked him up before. Corazon also instantly pointed him out in a lineup of photos. Richard Speck was the guy they were looking for, all right. After the murders, he went to a bar, sat down and had a few drinks. While there, the radio covered the murders of the nursing students, and to his surprise, announced that there was one survivor. By that afternoon, Speck's face was all over every paper and on every TV, while Speck hid out in Chicago's Skid Row. Even back then, the place was a maze of drug dens, brothels, and too many people under the influence of who knows what substance to recognize another face in a sea of other criminals who were hiding from police too. Not that there were any police in Skid Row anyway. Almost every able-bodied officer had been deployed to deal with the race riots that had broken out on the other side of the city. Over the next 2 days, a sex worker reported Speck for having a gun. Police arrived, confiscated the gun, but they didn't recognize him, and miraculously didn't even bother to arrest him. On July 16th, just before midnight, Speck attempted to slash his wrist with a broken wine bottle. He knew it was only a matter of time before he got caught, so he went on another bender to pluck up the courage to off himself before police caught up to him. A hotel clerk found him and called for help.
No one yet knows who the man in the emergency room is.
Again, police failed to recognize him, even with a photo of Speck on the dashboard of their patrol car. Thankfully, the doctor at the hospital they took him to was watching the news, and he took one look at that tattoo and the man lying on the bed, and he knew instantly this was the guy everyone was looking for.
For 2 days, the suspect, later identified as Richard Speck, was taken to Cook County Hospital where an alert doctor noticed the tattoo emblazoned on his arm that read, "Born to Raise Hell."
That had been written in the paper, "Born to Raise Hell." And I didn't see it, but I did, I saw some blood on his left arm.
Finally, Speck was arrested. And the question of how he managed to stay out of jail until the age of 24 was on everyone's mind. He started drinking at the age of 12, dropped out of high school at 16, and went off to bounce between his mother and 8 siblings, moving on to the next one who was willing to take him in when he got in trouble or overstayed his welcome. Before the age of 20, he'd suffered from at least 4 brain injuries from fights, falling out of a tree, and once when he was bashed in the head with a hammer. The hammer incident, it seemed, was the tipping point. It's here that Speck went from teenage drunk to a violent criminal that picked fights and took on risky behaviors like speeding, robbing stores, and burglarizing houses. He married a 15-year-old girl at the age of 20. His daughter was born while he was serving a month-long sentence for disturbing the peace after a night of drinking. Burglary, fraud, and robbery was Speck's bread and butter by this age. After that, he tried to assault a woman by knife point, but somehow only served 6 months of a 16-month sentence for that crime. It's during this 6 months that his young wife finally had the courage to leave him. After years of extreme abuse, sexual assault, and surviving several incidents when Speck tried to kill her. When his wife left him, he went on to stab a man outside a bar, nearly killing him. And get this, Speck was only fined $10 for attempted murder and put into county jail for 3 days when he failed to pay the fine. I know, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard too. By 1966, the year of the massacre, Speck had been arrested 42 times in Dallas alone. He left Dallas before his luck ran out and found out a month before the murders that his ex-wife had remarried. This news ramped up an already unstable, violent man into a complete spiral. He was only sober for the hour after he woke up. The rest of his days was spent in a drunken or drug-fueled haze, robbing stores and homes. On April the 3rd, he broke into a 63-year-old woman's house, assaulted her, and stole $2. A week later, Mary Catherine Pierce, a 32-year-old barmaid, went missing after leaving work, a bar that Speck frequented. Her body was found a day later, beaten to death, in a newly built house that Speck was employed to help build. Police tracked him down by going over the address on his paycheck, but he'd already left the hotel that he was staying at. After a close call with appendicitis that unfortunately didn't kill him, Speck went to the National Maritime Union hiring hall to apply for more work on the ships. 150 feet away from the hall's front doors, he saw the boarding house where pretty student nurses were living. And for the first time, Speck took time to plan an attack before he acted on impulse and relied on luck to get him through. But here, with 9 women to consider, he spent 2 weeks mulling things over. He decided that his switchblade knife was not enough, so he robbed and assaulted a 53-year-old woman he met at a bar the day before attacking the nurses. He stole her gun, dressed himself all in black, and then made his way on foot to the nurse's home just hours later. Speck had been planning this for weeks, and by the end of that night, he'd have killed 9 people in total and attempted to kill 1 man, attempted to sexually assault 1 woman, and managed to assault 2 more women successfully. Suddenly, those 42 arrests are looking like police missed the opportunity to take this monster off the streets so many times that it's nothing short of sinful. He maintained that he had no recollection of committing the murders, laying blame on drugs, alcohol, and his many head injuries affecting his sanity and memories. But Corazone's testimony, the fingerprints, and the stolen gun was more than enough to sentence him to death by jury decision. But that's not the end of the story.
The only surviving nurse, Corazon Amaral.
Speck's lawyer appealed his conviction multiple times, even going so far as to have his client's DNA run through the system. He based this solely on an independent study that tried to link certain genes to violent behavior. It was all junk science, so that didn't fly. Then he tried the insanity plea again, but every doctor they brought in held firm. Speck was sane and definitely knew right from wrong, evidenced by the fact that he admitted to details of the crime in his later years.
One of them get on, sit on me in the face. If she's gonna kick me out of the lineup, I went off, hit her in the chest and knife.
In 1971, Speck's defense team got him off death row by arguing that the jury that sentenced him was biased. All of them were in favor of the death penalty, and the case was so huge that all of them were familiar with it. So that meant that none of the jury could possibly be impartial to the colossal impact such a hideous crime had on the city of Chicago, and by extension, the state of Illinois.
Speck, who was 24 at the time, was found guilty and sentenced to die in the electric chair. But the Supreme Court overturned the death penalty.
I feel like it's really happened a little bit late. I wish it could have happened sooner, so it would have saved a lot of grief and sort of torturing type thing every time it came up. And I think he's had a pretty good life and a pretty good ending, really, for what he has done.
Speck appeared at his first parole hearing in 1976, but did not attend subsequent hearings. The surviving nurse, Corazon Amaral, returned to the Philippines.
Long story short, they got his sentence reduced to 300 years, with the option to apply for parole. He tried to get paroled 7 times, the last time being 1990. In those 2 decades, Speck was, well, an odd prisoner and a deeply strange man. He was quiet and didn't ask for much. He didn't get into fights, and he was allowed to release a bizarre set of jailhouse interviews with his boyfriend where they flaunt the fact that they smuggled drugs into the prison. And not just recreational drugs, he somehow smuggled estrogen into the prison too, officially making him the first prisoner to claim transgenderism. This interview, released after his death, sparked controversy about just what kind of oversight he actually got. And let's face it, it doesn't seem like he was in prison at all. That certainly doesn't look like a man being punished for killing 9 people.
What kind of drugs you got? Now? Coke, reefer, whiskey, wine.
The good life Richard Speck enjoyed is merely a symptom of a far larger.
Now stuffed about 9 pounds of sardines in that 5-pound can. And we keep stuffing and keep stuffing.
Sparrows flew into his room through the bars, and he tamed them and nursed them back to health. When the warden told Speck he couldn't have pets, Speck threw the live sparrow into a ceiling fan, announcing that he liked that bird. But if he wasn't allowed to have him as a pet, then no one could. That's Speck in a nutshell. He knew exactly what he did, and he felt about as much emotion about it as he did when he killed that poor little sparrow. He probably would have tried to get paroled every year after that, but he died of a heart attack just one day before his 50th birthday on December the 5th, 1991. And good riddance, I say. Richard Speck is another one of those cases that makes me rethink my stance on the death penalty. I've always thought that we humans have no business determining who lives or dies, no matter what their crimes are. But then a monster like Speck comes along, and I'm left seriously reconsidering my stance on that opinion. Even behind bars, Speck found a way to take the life of a helpless creature that never did him any harm, and the idea that he qualified to apply for parole horrifies me to my core. His life inside the prison is just a tragedy. How dare he be allowed to live it up inside the prison, protected, happy, high as a kite, and fed while 9 families are out there who will never see their daughters, sisters, and friends ever again. And while 2 women and a man had to live with the trauma of what he did to them, Speck is a monster. Simple as that. I won't lie to you. I'm mad about the lackluster punishment Speck got, so I'm probably not the best person to give a closing opinion on the matter, so I'll leave it over to you. What do you think about Speck, his crimes, and his non-existent punishment? And why has the world seemingly forgotten about the mass murder that brought the whole of Chicago to a standstill? You know what to do. Leave a comment, hit that like, and don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next one, people.